In this episode of the Robert Jean Experience, Robert sits down with his son Ahdom for an unfiltered conversation about what it was like growing up with a strict father. Ahdom shares his perspective on the challenges of feeling controlled and how those earlier experiences shaped his life and their relationship. Robert also reveals the hidden mechanics of the mind and how shifting emotional patterns can transform even the most difficult relationships. Robert is referred to as the Einstein of the mind for a good reason. He is widely regarded as a genius in emotional healing, personal transformation, and the mind-body connection. He is also a behavioral engineer and a neuroplastician. With nearly 40 years of hands-on experience, Robert has developed groundbreaking systems like Utaptics and FasterEFT, blending neuroscience, emotional healing, and practical tools to help people rewire their mind and create lasting change. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and be a part of these life-changing conversations. Robert.
Wow, this is going to be fun. Big travel. Many years have gone by, and even I've asked the kids in the past, what kind of dad was I? Because I actually don't remember. Granted, I worked on a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff, do show up occasionally, but it's just an interesting story. And of course, we have Ahdom, oldest son, and he's definitely kind of like the chip off the old block in a lot of ways. And of course, we all do the best we can from where we come from, and we just share. We share what we have within. I always say everybody has a ministry of something. And of course, our ministry is to share our belief and our attitudes of what we went through. So yeah, it's going to be a good conversation for sure. Being raw, being real.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about the brain and how everything works. So even when we want to parent differently than our parents, we find ourselves reacting the same way that they did. These are emotional patterns that we have formed. Why do they persist even when we consciously want to change?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Here's the truth about everything we do, not just parenting, all relationships too. Because, when I grew up, I don't have consciously a lot of memories of my childhood, but I remember when I grew up, um, I made a conscious decision when I was a kid because I moved from school to school, sometimes 2 or 3 schools in a year. I said, when I grow up, my kids are going to go to one school. And they all went to the same school I went to when I graduated from high school, from every one of them. So I made a conscious decision based on something I didn't like. But that's only one decision that actually turned out. Now, I wanted to be a better dad for sure. I didn't want to be like my dad. My dad was pretty rough, pretty hard on us kids. And again, for years, when I left home at 15 to move in with my grandmother, I had horrible nightmares about my dad. And it got worse every time I visited them. So that was my catalyst to try to fix the scary stuff inside my head. And I was searching. I was trying to figure out how. And of course, I was raised up by my grandmother. She was 34 years old when I was born. My mother was 15. She wanted mom to give me to her, but mom wouldn't do that. So I moved in with grandma because I had all these nightmares. And of course, it was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me to be even here standing for you today because of the positive influence from my grandmother. And even though I have some positive input, but I still had what you call the deep programmings that I experienced as a child. And that was what I was trying to get rid of or change or, silence my head. And of course, Christianity was, it was bribed to go to church, Now, I was 15 years old, and you can drive the car. I said, great. When do I start? Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night, the same day the churches are open. So that was my upbringing. But the deep impact is a lot of the stuff up to 15, and even some after 15, because all of these become imprinted ideas. Now, again, the psychotherapist, the psychology says you're imprinted 7 years of your life. That's not true. You are 7 plus the rest of your life. Imprints are updated, changed, and impacted, made worse, or even lessened, depending on how your brain process information. So why do we do what we don't want to do? This is an old age program, you know. And again, you know, even back in the Bible, you know, Paul said, you know, my spirit's willing, but my flesh won't let me. What he's saying, I consciously want to do it, but my programming inside me fights me. And the reason is you were trained emotionally, survival training to not do something or else something bad's going to happen. And that's what drives us. When people have, you know, fear of public speaking is a perfect example. It's the number one fear in the world. People would rather die than speak publicly. Now you think about that, doesn't make sense logically. It's just speaking, you know. And of course, I work with that one. And here's the program. Here's the program. You've been trained, emotionally indoctrinated, survival training, we'll call it trauma, by sitting in school and watching somebody else being humiliated in class. That trauma, or we call it an education, tells you it's not safe to speak up. And then it compounds. And if you're one of the talkers, you get a homework assignment, write 1,000 times, I will not speak in class. So they've emotionally conditioned the world, across the world, to keep your mouth shut. Now here it is, you enroll in a class, you will public speak, and this stuff is trying to keep you from doing it. The fears, that's the unconscious programmings. Now you look at your dad, you look at your mom, you look and how they interacted with you. They also are emotionally training you based on their emotional programmings. And now you think your logic, you know, I read this, you know, better parenting book. I want to be a better parent. And that's a good conscious idea, but consciousness doesn't necessarily override the conditionings your parents gave you. And that's where the battle is. That's where the fight is. You know, I work with clients every week. I have up to 20 to 30 hours a week in sessions. It always goes back. I say always, 99% of the time, goes back to how we were emotionally indoctrinated by the family, how our mothers treat us. We blame our mothers for our problem. We blame our fathers for our problem. I blame my dad, but my dad's gone, you know? So there is a mechanics in the mind that makes it seem real. And it's really not my dad. And, you know, I do talk about trauma. I'll give you a one-liner for trauma. Trauma is an education. Trauma is an education, which trauma equals education. And also trauma is survival training. Now, whatever bad things happen, it's an education to the world. And then your brain is going to take that experience, internalize it, and use it on you. That experience is external, but you internalize it, it becomes yours, it becomes you. And so that's where trauma comes from. Now, again, did I know that 20 years ago? No. You know, this is education we only wish we knew. You know, no one was born with a manual on how to fix something, you know. And the bad thing is, most systems out there, religions included, there's something wrong with you. Mm-hmm. There's something inertly wrong with you. There's a dark mark on your soul. You got bad genes. You got a disorder. You got some blockage or something. Or you got some virus floating around preventing you from being happy. And that's all horseshit, really. You know, it's not true. Because see, when you look at the brain, and of course I had to look at it from the mind's perspective, the brain's perspective, mechanics, to understand why I'm so screwed up. That was the beginning. I want to know why I'm so screwed up. Why am I so screwed up?
Yeah. So you can read all the books in the world, but if you don't know how to make those changes, this is the knowledge. You can receive all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to change the trauma, you're stuck with it. You can be lied. Go ahead.
I worked with a guy recently, and I tell you what, he spent way too much time reading Sigmund Freud's books. And he's trying to tell me why he's jacked up. I said, that's pure horseshit, you know. I said, listen, it has nothing to do with your mother, your daddy. It has everything to do with what you experienced, the way you internalized it. Mm-hmm. And again, he was fighting me. Every time we go change memories, he'd come back and said, well, it's because of the foot looks like a penis. I said, get the F out of here. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with your trauma and what you fantasize about stuff. It's your internal processing. It's what you're imagining and replaying and blaming and focusing. And most people don't realize this unless you listen to me enough. Everything inside you is yourself. When you have a memory of dad beating up mom or something happens here, it's all you, not them. You internalize it. You created these characters by witnessing something externally. And for me, that was the number one thing that set me free in understanding what was in me that made me do what I didn't want to do. Big time, big time. And I teach this one model where when I was 11 years old, we moved to my grandmother's house and we were renting it. And of course, I was in the 5th grade. And there was a tree next to our driveway. And I don't know what I did. I was at the top of the tree. The kids were yelling at me or something. But my dad was coming down the road. He pulled into the driveway. The kids backed away and I ran to my father. All right. So I ran to my father. He was my hero. And he had a hammer in his hand. He beat me with it at 11 years old. Now, that was a real experience. And guys, if you listen to the story, don't make up pictures. And if you do, who's beating me? It's your brain. It's not true today. But at that point at 11, it was real. Anytime I'd visit it, you know what I'd feel? The beating, the shame, the guilt, whatever's attached to this. If I was 22, 33, 44, 55, anytime I remember it, I'd re-experience it because that become a recording. By the way, I'm the movie director of all images in my mind, a recording I'm using against me. So at that time, I knew enough to internally shift and change how I represent that. I have a process we call about the 6 ways of re-imprinting memories, updating memories. And basically, I neurologically updated my memories. Now, you have to understand, every one of you, when you say you can't change memories, well, you can't if you don't know how. Memories are not for factual things. They're malleable, they're adjustable. And if you understand that, you understand the processes of the brain. I was at a birthday party. It was Stephanie's birthday party. I think it was 50th or 60th, whatever it was. And this big, tall German guy, he introduced himself. He says, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I help people change their lives. I'm a behavioral engineer. I help people get rid of bad memories." He says, "You can't get rid of bad memories." I said, "Well, you can't, but I can." So later on, we're eating dinner, and after dinner's over with, he started telling me a story about an event when he was like 15 years old. At 15 years old, he said, "I was in Germany, and I saw this guy riding a motorcycle. He got decapitated." Don't make up pictures, guys. And I said, interesting, because he wasn't very intense when he shared that. I said, "I'm kind of curious. When you recall this memory in your mind, how are you internalizing it? What do you see?" Now I'm going inside of his mind. He says, "I see it happening in front of me." "Do you see you? Do you see it? What do you see?" "I see me looking at the event." I said, "Interesting." I said, "Look at me. Do you see me or do you see you looking at me?" I said, "I just see you." I said, "Now, in that memory, when you look at it, what is it in color? Is it black and white?" It's black and white. I said, "Was it at night?" He said, "No." I said, "I don't know if you realize this. Your brain has already started to shift that memory. Because first of all, you can't watch you, watch me. Secondly, it was in color, it was in daylight, and your brain pulled out some of the colors to lessen its intensity." Now, the brain does have a natural way of lessening internal representations, but it also has another way to amplify them to make them worse. So if you're good enough, you can take a bad memory and make it really bad. And I can teach you how. Some of you already know how. And if you're really talented, you can take a bad memory and turn it into gold, a positive memory. There's a movie called Back to the Future. Of course, they have this DeLorean, and they put the time code and they go back. When you recall a memory of a childhood and you, in your mind, remember you are back, you're feeling as if you're there, but you're not. This is neurological information which your brain makes real today. And if you get this one fact, when I started looking at my 11-year-old experience, as I started working and changing, adjusting the aspects of the memory, the submodalities, all of a sudden my brain flipped the memory. Flipped the memory means it changed the memories by itself, which it changed it into another memory. And when I go to my dad, he puts his arm around me, and we walked in the house. He told me about his life. He said, "Do you want to go fishing?" And in my mind, we're out fishing. Now, what my brain did is combine several memories and create a new one. And he's out there throwing the rod, reeling it back in with a little jig on it, and I catch a little grasshopper, drop it in the water, and I catch this fish this far from the bank, and I can see the look on my dad's face. Now, the brain has this amazing ability to adjust memories to make them worse or make it better. Most people never get to that point. They're still reliving the thing that happened 50 years ago or 60 years ago or 5 years ago or last week. It's all bad mental processing. But when I was started, man, I was on a journey. I had a lot of demons. I say demons. Demons mean I had a lot of internal traumas and torments, bad emotional conditions. And unfortunately, without thinking, we pass these on, unconsciously unwilling. And of course, Adam and I, we talked before, and he's sharing his emotions, how he felt, and it's exact same emotions I felt before he ever existed. So what I discovered that we actually train or spread or share our own inner wounds, and we educate our children and treat them the same way that we were treated to pass the gauntlet down to the next generation. That's how it works.
Yes. So before Adam joins the conversation, would you call this breaking generational patterns, or some people might say breaking generational curses if you're in
Yeah.
religion?
Well, let's just say this, and I don't really believe in curses, but I do believe in that we've been emotionally indoctrinated to survive. So these are survival skills, and some children will move past that trauma and evolve past it. Some people stay with it and go down deeper into it, which means both of those are successes. Neither one are failures. It's just a matter of focus, intention, and mental and emotional replay.
Yes. So for those that are listening and you say that something negative is a success, can you explain
Well,
a little bit?
yeah, that's a good panic attacks or panic attacks bad.
Mhm.
Is anger bad? To your brain, nothing's bad. Now, again, we're talking about the survival brain. Consciously, we say, oh, that's bad. But conscious will not change the mental, unconscious neuroplasticity of the mind, what's in the brain. It won't change that. And so for your brain to give you a panic attack, that's perfectly normal. Why is it giving you that? Because it has references and proofs. To act like your parents is normal because we have reference and proof. That's our survival jungle we grew up in. We take our jungle with us and we share our jungle everywhere we go. So it is a success, but you're not happy with what you're producing. It's all unconscious. It's foundational training.
Mhm.
That's the key. It's just training. And you can't, if you curse it, if you hate your father, if you hate this, you hate that, the curse is already in you. You're practicing again what you said you don't want.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, that's a good explanation. All right. So, Adam, welcome to this conversation. Um, Robert, do you want
Hello.
to, should I ask him the questions or do you want to?
Are you asking questions? I mean, I
Okay.
introduce yourself, Adam, and just kind of share a little bit about yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam. Happy to be here.
Very good.
Yes, thank you for joining this conversation. I know from watching Robert for many years, actually over a decade, I have, if I was a listener right now, I would be super excited to hear that Adam is on this podcast, that you're joining Robert, and that you're sharing your story. So, as a kid growing up with Robert as your father, how did that affect you? Can you talk a little bit about the challenging moments?
Yeah, when you think about the early days and where things became what they are now, it's almost like a night and day difference, really. I mean, if talking about DeLorean time machine, if you were to go back in time and tell old, well, young Robert what what his future looked like, I don't think that he would buy into it. I don't I don't think he
Mhm.
would believe what you were telling him because, in some sense, there was a simplicity to who he was then. And, you know, I guess it's not such a small town anymore, but where he came from was, just a little more, I don't know, it was a different time, first of all. The world was different, but, you know, in those days, dad didn't have a 9 to 5 clock in, clock out kind of job growing up. He had his hands in a lot of different projects all the time. We would buy cars, pull them apart, sell the parts for more than the car was worth, and that's kind of how we made money. And that's kind of, the we look back on, when we were younger, there were car parts in the house sometimes being cleaned, or
How was dad with you? How was he acting? What kind of a guy was? What kind of a father was he? I mean, get to the nitty gritty.
the nitty gritty.
Tell the truth.
Yep.
Don't try to cover up anything.
Well, I think of things in a progression, from
Yeah.
here to here to here. And, when you look at early years, like when I'm little, I feel like, there was a tendency, to fly off the handle. There's a lot of anger. There was a lot of, there was no tolerance. It was very much tough love kind of bringing up, I mean, and there was a shedding of that eventually, but in the beginning, I feel like that's kind of how things were. I know there was like I say jump, you say how high kind of thing. I say jump, you say how high rather. There is a there was a role for a child and a role
Mhm.
for a parent, and I know that had to have been learned. But early on, and the other part of it too is, when my parents got together, dad was really into he was going to school for biblical stuff, and I think that his experience with my grandmother and leading into that, he there was a lot of religious stuff in our house, but it wasn't necessarily, what you would call, like everybody else's religious
Mhm.
upbringing, even though it was based on the same stuff. Once dad was educating himself in biblical studies, I think he saw discrepancies, and at least at the time, he saw discrepancies in what other people were doing and what we should be doing. So we did things a little differently. We were heavily guarded on what we watched. We weren't allowed to watch Smurfs or Scooby Doo or Ninja Turtles or anything that he saw went against the text, right? And so, there was a lot of things that I think kids my age were kind of used to talking back and forth about that I had really very limited exposure to or none at all. So I couldn't really relate in that sense. And that went back to those religious views. We didn't celebrate a lot of the same holidays everybody else did. We didn't do Easter. We tried Passover. We celebrated Hanukkah every year because we rationalized that that's something Jesus would have celebrated. So that's what we're going to celebrate. And so, I think the intentions were good there. But how does it translate into my life is a different story. It does make you feel a bit like an outsider, having to kind of learn where you fit in to everybody else in the conversation. And so, as I got older in middle school, I was, much. I think we spent a lot more time together, especially in the summertime, because we'd work on different projects. We were in, we had cars in our backyard. He'd take me to the Mopar Nationals, which is a cool little car show that we'd pull parts off the cars. My friends and I would come over, and Dad and I talked about this, but, I look back on it now and I see in the neighborhood that we grew up in, the boys a lot of the guys, some of them were family that would come around, didn't have a dad that was around. So I really kind of felt like the time that we spent in the summer working on these cars and stuff, they were getting probably a lot more out of it than I maybe realized, having him around. And so I know there was an imprint there, on them as well with working together. And I feel like, you know, of course I didn't quite appreciate the moments that I was in, because to me it was something that I was obligated to do. I had no choice. But looking back, a lot of my favorite memories still come from that time. I still think about the music that I listened to, even in high school, came from the music we listened to when we were pulling parts off of these cars and kind of hanging out together and having a good time. But lurking behind all that, there was still a walk the line kind of attitude I had to have around dad, because I mean, emotionally, you don't know what's going to happen, but you do know this: you're going to agree with whatever he has to say, or else, there's going to be consequences. But
I remember, I remember one story you shared about a word that was said. Tell that story. You remember that
uh,
word?
let me think. Maybe,
It was a bad word. You didn't
yeah,
even know what it was, and you
yeah,
said it. And just tell that story.
yeah. There was definitely a time when my sister and I learned this really fun word. We had no idea what it meant, and it's funny, I've got a similar story to that that's a little bit older too. But we started saying it and dad heard it. What did you say? And then we figured out we're not supposed to say that word, but there was no tolerance. There wasn't oh, you didn't understand. That's
Yeah.
okay. You know, he didn't have those kind of powers. He didn't have those kind of references. So, um, in my other story, when I was maybe like 5, I was in the back of the car and somebody had taught me this really cool trick with your hand. If you can hold all your fingers down except for one, it's really cool. And of course, I showed my parents this. It was not a good day for me because I learned really quick that's not a finger that you're supposed to have up. But it was, it did come from a place of love, because with a biblical understanding, he was really just trying to save me from doing the wrong thing, you
Mm,
know.
mm.
But boy, did things really change though. I mean, like, we talk about this and it's almost like another life. I remember it. I can still see it in my mind's eye, and the good memories are still there. But it's almost like that wasn't like you. I mean, it was you, but it's not like you now. It's like I'm
Yeah,
talking
but
about
you
a different
you
person.
you worked on them though. You
I
know,
worked a lot on them.
yeah, you worked. Yeah, and that's a big difference too. Adam
It
is
is.
he works himself like I
Yep.
do. But I
Yep.
will say this too. I wasn't raised. My parents that I live with, we were free birds. We just ran around. We did whatever we want. Now
Yep.
again, if dad, you see a look on his face, dad drives in the driveway, you're going to run and hide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was my training. So moving into grandma, I'm exposed to religion. Now it's a little bit different than the teachings of Jesus. Of course, I did what they said up front, cried, pleaded God for,
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing, and it didn't
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
It was still there. And I go, these guys must not know. This is my thinking. These guys must know what they're talking about. So I asked grandma to go buy me a concordance and I want a Bible. So she bought me an NIV Bible and I started doing word studies. Now, by the way, I was not very good at school. I
Yeah.
actually started to learn to read and study by trying to find the answer to the torments I had within me. So then I started studying and I started finding that there was a lot of paganism involved with the modern day churches. And so, I want to be a follower of the way, the truth. And so I just said, okay, I'm not doing those things. And when I raise my kids up, we're not participating in pagan stuff. And then so that's why I did what I did. It was not because, any other reason other than
Yeah.
I want to do the right thing.
Yes.
And so that's why I did what I did. And there's stories, like I remember, and Adam, you can share this, but I remember we was in Scotland. I was eating haggis at somewhere in Scotland,
Yeah.
and Adam goes, tell him that story, Adam.
You got to remind me. I really love that trip. Uh,
You
tell
talking
me
about haggis? The haggis and almost caught the house on fire.
Oh, I told you that story then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. I didn't know that. Because I know we've worked on it before. Maybe, the nature of it is that maybe I didn't even tell you the details and we just worked on it. But
Hmm.
but yeah, that is kind of a big story. And I remember the time that we had worked on it was kind of tied into that little anecdote that I told you the other day, where in the beginning, when you were formulating, these processes, you and I had some kind of fight, and I went outside and was being physical with a trash can, an inanimate object that I was just
I
having
remember
my way
that.
with. And you bring me in, and we worked on that memory and maybe a couple of others. Because I really held on to this for years. I felt a lot of different things in that memory, and I still go back there to visit just to make sure there's nothing there because I knew what kind of place it had in me. And it was about, there was a time when I couldn't tell you what age, but probably 9 or 10. We lived in a single wide trailer, Yukon, Oklahoma, and
Mobile home. Yeah.
mobile home. And my sister says, hey, Dad said when we get everything cleaned up, we can go play. So, oh, cool. So we didn't have very much left to do. So we cleaned up. We hurried up. We left the house. We got to go down the street and hang out with some friends. And we were hanging out, excuse me, we were hanging out over there. And all of a sudden, somebody comes up and says, have you heard, has your dad called you? Has anybody called you? Your house is on fire. I thought, oh my God. So of course I grab my bike. I run down run down the street on my bike, get home. Fire department's already out there. I look down in the where we watered the dogs, and there's this pot of like charred something. I didn't know what it was. And so, everything was fine. My house didn't burn down. But the water had overflowed. At the time, Dad was a beekeeper. He had an apiary, little bees out in our backyard, and he was making sugar water for them. And it had boiled over. And when he came home, I'd come home and just threw my bike down. And I knew that I had to get that bike put up. So it wasn't like an additional thing that I was going to get in trouble for. And there was an incident when my dad was violent and got angry. And and I don't really remember much after that, but I do remember that sort of surprise, that sort of shock that hit me when that happened. And I don't think things like that happen too often, but they happen from time to time. It was one of those memories that I really had to work on because at the time, there was a sense of not feeling loved, of feeling rejected, of feeling that I, I'm the oldest, so there's always this sense of responsibility. I think maybe there was even a sense of betrayal from my sister, thinking, "You told me it was okay that we could go play, but I got in like this terrible trouble." Now when I look back on that memory, I see bits of it, but they don't feel charged. They don't feel like they did. I mean, it was a big part.
Yeah. When we were in Scotland eating, he goes, Dad, you remember when you almost caught the house on fire? So I said, I had no memory of it, none
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
I go, what happened? So they said, well, you had bees and you had the sugar water on the stove, smoke barreling out,
Hmm.
and you ran up to the house and spanked me and went into the house. That's the
Yeah.
story I got. But now
Yeah.
the story seems to be different now when you tell it this way. So I was like, because I created a movie, a story,
You're
what you
right.
said
Right.
then, and now
Right.
you're telling it says it's not the same story you told me because I have no memory of it.
Yeah. Right.
So it's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. Um, it
And,
really
and, and I
is.
said, and I told you, no, I don't remember. I said, how could you forget? It scarred me for life. And I said, I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I had problems. I definitely did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that was maybe one of the biggest things that I've worked on. To me, it was like that one was, and it's probably because we were dealing with multiple things at once, but there was a through line of those feelings that were incorporated with a few memories that we worked on that day. And and it was always kind of interesting to me what things would end up setting you off, back then. I didn't really know, but it made me, at least back then, feel like there was an imperfect nature to how I'm representing myself in the world. And so it kind of made
Yeah.
me feel like I got to be perfect. I can't screw up
Hmm.
because it's like school. You guys were talking about school earlier about the fear of public speaking. It kind of comes down to that for me, is that idea of I've got to be perfect, because in school, when you turn in a paper, what you get back are those red circles, those red lines, and that's
Yeah.
sometimes what you end up focusing on, is all those little red circles. And sometimes I think it can make a person not want to get started on something because they're just going to mess it up. They're just going to,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be perfect, so it's not even worth doing. Or and so those were kind of some of the themes that I feel like, I had to battle into young
Hmm.
adulthood and things like that. They show up in your
Mhm.
job, they show up with other bosses. I
Yeah.
still remember, like, my first job. I had this boss, and the first time I cleaned my side of the floor, he would bend down and he'd say, "You see that? And, come over here. You got to get in the light." And back then I was like, "This is like my dad." You know, this is like my dad catching those little things. Um, but but if you don't go back and address those memories, then you find that person in a lot of
Yeah.
different people. They show
Yeah.
up in a different pair of shoes.
Yeah. And, another thing too, even though you said, because I see that the perfectionism program trying to keep us from getting hurt and harmed. And I
Hmm.
remember coming home because I was doing seminars then, and you're laying on the couch. And I know if you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken just right before they close and you order white meat and they don't have it, they give you a lot of dark meat. So every Tuesday, I'd go and bring all this chicken in. And you said something, Dad, every time you come home, you're bitching and complaining.
Huh.
And I go, oh, yeah. So I went and worked on that. And then another thing,
Wow.
yeah, I got a lot of lessons I
I
learned.
don't remember that. I don't remember that.
I do. And another thing you said to me too, you said, Dad, the stuff you're putting up ain't perfect. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
said, yeah, I know because I'm putting it up. So
Yeah.
that perfectionism program I obviously got rid of because I can only do what I can do, and that's all I can do.
Right. Right. Not just probably my stuff, because I remember being, when you're developing your whole company with this. I remember thinking, because I felt like, I have some kind of ownership with it too. I remember thinking to myself, you told me this story about grandma, how you went in to have some pudding and it was like banana pudding but had peaches in it. And
Yeah,
I always kind of took that metaphor. It's like, that's just like my dad. It doesn't matter if he has all the ingredients, he's going to make something out of it.
right. That's
And
right.
it
Yeah,
was just kind of a criticism. He'll put the panty on his head too to keep the curlers in, or whatever, whatever kind of
grandma.
adaptation. Yeah, yeah. And so that I kind of just, I had different set of issues to work on in my early 20s. I feel like some of those things might have been addressed, but then there was a whole different set of issues. It was like it was a
Mhm.
weird situation where we were already in the process of understanding how our mind works, and yet we were still facing issues that it's almost like, because you know how to address things, you can your mind's very clever in teaching you to maybe ignore other things, or not even be aware of other things that are going on, even though the symptoms are there, even though you can
Mhm.
see, oh well, I've got this issue in my life, but
Yeah,
almost like, you know what I mean. And
right.
so, I mean, I had my own early 20s was almost like a rebellion in a way, you know. Even though we got along, there was
Right.
still some kind of rebellion behind it. I've
Well,
always felt.
we always go through those stages, and I've learned a lot because of Adam, my relationship with him, and um, one of the early things, even before I knew about the psychosensory process or tapping, I was reading a book called Mind Works, and Adam said, "Hey, can I go see my friend? I think it's Chelsea." And I said, "Well, do you have a ride? Yeah. Do you have a ride back?" He said, "Yeah." So he goes and he calls me after dark. Dad, can you come and get me? I said, I thought you said you had a ride. So I go and I pick him up, and a friend gets in the back, and I'm bitching. And Adam goes, Dad, you always bitch and gripe and complain in the car. No, wait, I'm bitching. No, what happens is I was bitching and you had this attitude like whatever, or here
Yeah.
you go again.
Yeah.
And I hit the brakes, said, if you don't like it, get your ass out.
I remember that.
And
Yeah.
and then you said, Dad, you always gripe in the car.
Yeah.
And it pissed me off because he's right.
You
So
know,
I'm
kind of
trying, huh?
I got to add to that too. That in itself is really kind of a big deal because growing up, we couldn't have even told you that information. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? You were at this
Earlier,
point,
yeah.
and yes, you're at this point where you're like receptive to that all of a sudden. You'd take something, you go back and you'd work on it. And I remember you may remember this too. You'd watching that movie Signs, the alien one.
Hmm.
And I remember I wasn't there, but mom and other people that were there kind of having a chuckle that Robert's up here just get rid of the demons. It doesn't matter if
Yeah,
it's real
scary
or fake.
point.
He's being triggered, you know. And I always thought that was kind of funny because I
Yeah.
do remember you saying you went and saw Alien
So
back when it was new
as a
and kind of
kid,
scared
yeah.
you, you know.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so it is interesting because I remember that phase. I almost call that like your Renaissance period. It's where you were
Yeah.
discovering things and
Yeah.
changing things, and you're very receptive and open. And back
Yeah.
to your story, there was a time I could not have even told you that.
I
I
know. I
couldn't have
know.
told you that.
I mean, of course, I was wanting and willing to move and improve. So it is. So I'm pissed off and I'm driving home. I
Hmm.
bark a few orders and I go to my office and my wife comes in and says, "What's wrong?" I said, "I don't know. Go away. Leave me alone." So I said, why am I acting this way? What is it? Why am I doing this? And I'm remembering what it said in the book. Ask why. Why is it? What is it?
Yeah.
And it took me back to a memory. My dad was like that too, but Adam helped me with that later. So it was when I moved into my grandmother's house. Grandpa was always bitching about everything, always bitching about her. Dinner's not on table, but he surely was bitching when he picks me up from wrestling practice back and forth. And I go, that's why I learned it from him. And then, of course, the book says find a memory or an experience you'd rather have instead, experience instead. And it took me back. I got tears in my eyes. It took me back when Adam was born and they pulled him out and the nurse gave him to me. And I carried him down, gave him to the nurse. It got rid of the bitching of in the car, but it
Yeah.
didn't get rid of it coming home. So that was the change that made an impact. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I was willing to
That,
learn and grow, and I was searching really hard.
yeah. And you have to come to appreciate in these processes when you have that kind of potency in a feel good memory that you
Hmm.
give thanks because it's that shining light that you can turn around and come back to when when these things are over. It's like you said, you pulled this resource, this great resource. And it's really amazing
Hmm.
to me, by the way, as mysterious growing up, like who I thought you were. You're very stoic to me as a kid. You didn't express a lot of emotions. You kind of
Hmm.
bottled up, like seeing you cry was not anything I
Yeah,
ever saw.
right.
But later in this period, you were seeing it a whole hell of a lot more. And like
Hmm.
the fact that you're, in your 60s and you can pull that memory up from 1984 and
Hmm.
it still have
Hmm.
these strong emotions is really
Hmm.
just really a blessing. I mean, if
Yeah,
you think about it.
it's for me. Like I said, I've always on a mission to solve the riddle within me.
Hmm.
And not only that, but help other people too.
Hmm.
It's being the oldest, you're almost like the caretaker of the family, or the
Yeah.
kids anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, just keep moving forward and trying to solve and understand it. Not, I've tried. Yeah, I mean, Adam, you can tell him when Dad's around, he's always got some self-help playing in the background, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and I adopted that. I mean, that's a big part of my life. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a an axiom now. It's like, he would tell me, when I drive here to there, I've always got something playing, and I
Hmm.
have to purposely make time for music. I love music, but I am just always inundated in some
Hmm.
audiobook or
Hmm.
podcast or something, but they're all geared towards self-improvement,
Yeah.
learning something about the self, about others, all that.
Yeah. We
I've
share a lot
definitely
of
took that.
similar studies. We're listening to some stuff now. Don't want to talk about it though.
Yeah.
You know,
But our interests cross over in a lot of different areas.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's just a continual growth, and of course, our relationship has improved as we improved.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
And I'm thankful for the hardships that came with it because I mean, they show you where you need to heal. They show you
Mhm,
where you need to work. And
mhm.
we're not there anymore.
Yeah, it's over.
It's over. Now we're here. We have an opportunity to spend time together, enjoy each other's presence, and bring the best out of each other. We've been there for each other, you know,
Yeah.
for heartaches, just to talk about stuff, get things off our
Yeah.
chest and work. And then we get off the phone. I'm sure we're both tapping. So,
Adam's come to me and I help him work through some
yeah.
stuff and listen to him and give him some nice wisdom.
Oh, for
My
sure.
youngest one, he's, I don't know how long it was. He's called me on the phone crying and said, Dad, I need you to help me. So I go to his house. We work on a major issue for his whole
Hmm.
life. The reason why he's been the way he was, cleaned up a lot. So, um, there's it works. Not all my children have taken it on, but it's all about decisions. Everybody has a decision,
Yeah.
and some people will embrace willing to change, and some people will always blame someone else for their problems. I did for a long time until I got to the point I
We all
said, they're
do.
not even here,
Yeah. They
So
can't fit in there. They can't fit in your
um,
head.
no,
But
but
yeah, it's true.
and also, the sad thing is people, I say sad, even Jesus said a prophet is not known in his own village because they
Hmm.
saw him grow up. They saw their
Yeah.
shortcomings. They saw their problems.
Yeah. Right.
And some people still hold on to those things and hold it against you in spite of the changes that you've already made.
Yeah.
So it's just how the ball rolls, and you can't be sad about it because if you're sad about it, you hold sadness in you and it wears you out.
Yeah.
Like just recently, a young man, 31 years old, was killed because he's sharing his belief and his opinions.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he died and said, "What do you do with his death?" I said, "What I do is I said, I had a tear in my eye about it. But then I thought, okay, what can I do? I can't do anything. I can't go fix it. I can't solve it. I can't undo
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll remember a really positive moment in my life, feel it in my mind, feel it in my body, and I
Yeah.
sit into his wife and his kids.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to work, but at least it makes
Doesn't
me
matter.
feel better.
Yeah. That's all that
I'm
matters.
investing in that, or I can get pissed off and angry and
Yeah.
sad and hate and rage. What does that do? Destroy me.
Yeah. And
So
and I
I
would say
deserve better.
that the same, whether you're honoring a person or, their passing and all that, or if it doesn't matter what it is. There's, if it's not your president, if it's not your, whatever, accidents, things are going to come up in your life. This is kind of like a
Mhm.
Taoist point of view. It's like you bend, you flow, but you have to get rid of your stuff, no matter what it
Yeah.
is. It's
Yeah.
you got to get rid of your stuff because
Clean,
you
keep
can't
your head
change
clean.
it. You
Yeah.
can't change it. There's a sense of helplessness there, even.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's like,
Yeah.
what? There's nothing you can do about anything that happens.
Yeah.
In your life, things are going to come in, people are going to pass,
They're going to
and
come, they're going to go.
you're going to come and they're going to
So,
go.
so the thing
But
is
what
what
are
are you
you
going to hold
honoring?
on to? Yeah. What are you
Right.
honoring? What are you going to hold on to?
Yeah.
What are you going to use for you or against you? You get to make that decision. And
Yeah.
whatever decision you make is okay with your brain. It's going to support that, but it may not be so beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
there's
it's,
plenty to give thanks for, and it can shroud that. You know what I
mhm,
mean? There's a lot of
mhm.
things to be grateful for, but you can't see it through the stuff if you don't take
Yeah.
care of
So
it.
some of you guys who are listening to this, it's really important to learn how to make peace with what's inside you. If you have an issue with someone else, the issue's inside you, you know. So, I have a course you can change yourself, master training. You need this. Everybody needs this to change yourself, to make peace with yourself. And I got free stuff. There's free stuff. I've got these podcasts. These podcasts are hour and a half long. You can learn. The most important thing is if you change what you hold within you, it's going to impact you. your children, your great grandchildren, because I'll be honest with you, I mean, Adam, he works on himself and how he handles and process his own relationships at home with his children and his wife. If he didn't work on his anger and unforgiveness within him about me or anyone else, guess what he's going to be passing down? The exact same thing I was passed down to me. And it'll be a generational flow because it's emotional training. And you know, Adam and I, we talked, I don't know, like a couple of hours the other day, just talking in general. And you know, you think about it, he had the same emotions of not being good enough or not loved or whatever, or guilty, whatever it was we were talking about. And those exact same things I had, exact same emotions.
Hmm.
So without knowingly, I shared and trained them to have my system.
Yeah.
And I venture to say, I learned it from where I came from.
Yeah.
It's a ripple effect. So to end the curse, if there is a curse, or the bad emotional trainings, heal yourself today. Change your memories of hurt and pain today. And,
Yes.
you know, you can't undo what's done. You know, Adam and Rachel, the two oldest ones, they got the bad dad. Now, Matthew got a little bit of the bad dad, not so highly emotionally intelligent dad. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. But I was moving through, and I mean, I think Matthew's probably around nine, maybe nine or let's see, 1990, 1999. So he was 9 years old when I actually started buying the process
Hmm.
that sped up my personal changes.
Yeah.
I was on a slow road, slow boat to China. I was never going to get there the way I was.
Mm.
But my search and desire to figure out why I'm so screwed up and come to find out I wasn't screwed up at all. I was just perfecting the art of misery that I learned from where I came from. And I didn't want to be on that boat. I wanted something better.
Yeah.
So, you know, bringing in different resources, and I studied all kinds of stuff. And, you know, the internet has changed my life. It was my university with a keyboard, you know, right there. I was searching, listening, and learning
Hmm.
all the time, putting things together, sorting it out. What doesn't work? What does work? Simplifying it because it's got to be simple.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's been a great journey, and you know, very proud of you, Adam, and you know, you're doing a great job in your life, and you know, we just got you're gonna have, you know, your kids are gonna have kids, I'm sure, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even know what I've passed along, you know, already. I don't know what I've passed along.
You have, right?
I'm sure. Absolutely. And everybody's got the same story when they're a young parent. They're not as good as, you know, they are when they get a little bit older, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
wiser.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we can all look back on that's a whole separate thing, going back and working on your own regrets, working on your own, you know, missteps and how you'd like to do better and you know, the loss that you might feel around that too. Because I'll tell you, you know, it's a little different whenever you're looking for something the way you did, it started digging and finding it, than having it be part of your family culture at a certain point. It's different. It's different when um, you know, the person that may be your biggest healer is the one telling you how to do it. You really have to get past something. And
Right,
it's like,
right.
you know, and of course, you know, I've been a big part of the process along the way. I was in it for years. We went to Habilitat, did some amazing work. That's still like a highlight of my life, I think, was working with the people that I worked with there. It's just really cool. And then we've done all kinds of cool travels too during that time when we went to the UK and I mean it's just really cool to see people. To me, it feels like a miracle to see somebody who's handicapped by their own stuff and then come out of it just
Right.
like a different person, a completely different person. It's like you see somebody in front of you change. To me, that's just
Mm-hmm.
one of those things that I feel like you don't forget. You don't forget how that feels seeing somebody
Mm-hmm.
flip like that, and then
Yeah.
seeing them
So
later on and they're totally different people.
yeah. So you said, you know, the day you punched the trash cans, you worked on some of those other memories, which I didn't know what the memories you were working on. No, right?
Yeah,
I didn't
for
know
sure.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
so
mean, and maybe I didn't tell you, but I feel like I did some. Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
yeah. And I remember I was laying in bed, I had tears in my eyes, and we were just kind of going through it. Like that was early on, I would say.
Mhm.
Middle
Helping
school,
you. Yeah.
maybe early high school.
I see another thing with my process too. Um, I can help someone and never tell me what it is. They have to know, they
Yeah.
have to associate, and
Yeah.
I can help them maneuver through it and clean it up. And of course, that's really great with your family, you know,
Yeah.
because that way they still keep their inner secrets, whatever it is, and you can
Hmm.
still guide them to clean up whatever it is that's tormenting them,
Yeah.
especially children. I mean, I tell you, be honest with you. I say be honest. I'm always honest, but the truth is, a lot of our stuff starts in childhood. A lot of our, not a lot. And I mean, some people they may have had a nice childhood, but teenage years got them, or maybe early adulthood have major traumas will mess up their life or redirect their life in a not so pleasant way. So
Hmm.
it's not always the childhood. It can impact us, or it always impacts us one direction or another.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's being able to help someone shift perception. Cause all problems starts with memory, and memory creates perception. If you perceive yourself guilty and the world's evil, you change the memories that built that, you perceive yourself safe and the world's a safe place to live. But the reason why we have these values and ideas is because of experiences, traumas, or stories, or etc.
Your relationship with each other is an example of something that is completely different than what I generally see, which is blaming each other. Oh, I'm not like, and there's lots of estranged children and
Mm-hmm.
relationships. Obviously, we can't make everyone communicate and talk, but
Mm-hmm.
we can live in the upper model of the world. And really, that's what you two have shown is
Yeah.
living in the upper model of the world changes your relationship with each other, the way you relate now, Adam, to your wife, to your children, and how you're changing things. And I was going to ask you, Adam, about the negative patterns you noticed about yourself. But what I'm really seeing is you're noticing a lot of the positive things that came out of your relationship with your dad too,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
now you are doing the similar things that Robert started teaching maybe you early on about how to do that inner work. And now you're doing it.
Hmm.
If you didn't do this work, you would be a different person. So would your dad.
Definitely.
I mean,
Oh yeah. Oh
There's
yeah.
no question. I mean, I've recently given a short seminar on some of this stuff up at my own place of work, and I still use it as a means to help anybody who is open enough to try to understand and really want to change something. I mean, I'm open to my kids and my family about it. If they want to come and work on some of their stuff, whether it's about sports or relationships or whatever else. And for me, I couldn't really even imagine if I didn't have that because it's so front and center. After, you know, in the recent years, I would say the last like 10 years, I became like such a big reader. And that was something I never really was. That was always something I struggled with was reading. And that was something that I worked on. And now I'm like a really big reader. And a lot of the things, I think you guys were talking about books. If you don't go, you know, if you're reading all these books, whether it's Sigmund Freud or whatever, if you're reading all these books to learn how to heal yourself, you can find a lot of really good stuff in there. But having this as my foundation really brings a different perspective into what I'm reading. First of all, you start learning that some of the modern science is catching up to the things I've known about for a long time and has been part of like my understanding of how we see the world. And now some of that stuff is becoming a little more mainstream. And so to me, having that understanding as my foundation, it helps me see things in a completely different way. And so now I'm much more mindful of my stuff, of my programmings when they come up. That's something that I feel like I struggle with. Like maybe there was stuff going on that I wasn't really seeing fully. And I think I've gotten better at taking those opportunities to turn that into transformation and work on myself. So, I mean, I can't even imagine. And, then there was a pandemic. There's a lot of challenges that come up with things like that, where
Oh yeah.
your whole world starts to shift and you have to say, okay, so I'm stuck inside at home. What kind of stuff really comes up? And and there's a number of different facets you can think of just off the pandemic. But I did a lot of growing in that period. I really did. And a lot of it was just tap, 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 tap. And so I know that was a
Yeah.
big period of change for me.
Yeah, I think another thing that I kind of remember some of the things. Adam hated tomatoes.
I was going to bring that up too. That's another
He
one of
hated
those
tomatoes.
things.
Tell him about your hatred towards tomatoes.
Yeah, one day I was in a Starbucks that was like part of a Target, store, and I was just sitting there and I had this sandwich in front of me with a tomato on it, and I pulled the tomato off and I don't know what got into me. I just said, what if I just sat here and tapped on it and just kept smelling it, tasting it, licking it, and all this other stuff? And because I mean, I could get triggered by these little cherry tomatoes. At lunch they would put it on the table and kind of squish it in front of me and watch me squeam. And I just kind of just sat there and cleaned up stuff, and I'd start taking bites to where it just wouldn't bother me at all. It was really funny because I'd go get like a burrito or something. If there's tomatoes in it, I'd take bites and start pulling these tomatoes out. So after I did this, I was having a burrito and I pulled something out of my mouth just out of habit. It was an onion. It's like all of a sudden I could pick out the onions. The tomatoes didn't bother me. And so now, I'll get like a burger or something that's got a tomato on it. I might eat half the burger with the tomato and the other half without it, but I'll still usually end up eating the tomato. And that
I,
was
I
not
think
anything I did before.
I think it's linked because I like tomatoes. Maybe I don't know.
I really don't know what it's
I
linked
don't
to
either.
now. I can't remember even, but I do know I had some memory about you were working somewhere with a friend and they had tomatoes growing and there was these caterpillars all over them. And there's like a
Oh, okay.
smell or something I
Oh, okay.
associated
So it
with
made
it.
it disgusting with the caterpillar. Okay, I
Yeah, yeah,
get it.
something like that, but
All
then
right.
I'd have memories of you making like fried green tomatoes and I like those. I like
Oh yeah,
ketchup. I
those
like
are good.
salsa. It was fine in a lot of different things. I just couldn't eat them by themselves. And
Hmm.
now it's not a problem. I don't even think about it.
That's cool.
Don't even think about it. And there's little things like that I shift, and then you just kind of go on with life and go, yeah, I did used to have that problem, not anymore.
But you think about it, Crystal. How many people can say, "Oh yeah, that used to bother me"?
Hmm.
Mm,
You don't hear that often.
exactly.
I used to not like this or that. I didn't like wine. I thought it was disgusting. Why would you drink this shit?
Yeah, yeah,
I'd have girlfriends try to get me drinks. I ain't drinking that. It's gross.
yeah,
So I'm in Greece and there's always wine everywhere. Wine with every meal. I go, it does look a little bit more sophisticated drinking a glass of wine than a big old mug
yeah,
of beer.
yeah.
And they say wine's better for you. So I just sat down with it. I started working on it, cleaned up, addressing it. And it had an emotional link to my grandfather who was an alcoholic. So I cleaned it up. Even though I cleaned it up, it didn't make me a connoisseur of wine. So then I had to figure out what wines do I like.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
started drinking more wine, taste it. So I drink wine every night. And after after a bottle a night, you start liking it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I just try different types just to
yeah,
try. Now, do I drink wine today? I can. I don't. And if somebody come over the bottle of wine, I'll drink some if I want some. It's not like I'm repulsed by it, but
yeah,
there's definitely a yes and a no. Depends on what I want.
yep,
So it gives us the power to change how we feel and
yep,
what we do and what we address.
yeah.
I know I keep talking the most recent, I think it's a great victory for me was because I love to travel, and I enjoy traveling. And so I flew to Hawaii and I didn't know it was a panic attack, but that's really what it was. I was having heart pounding through my chest, a shortness of breath. I go, what the hell's happening? I'm having a heart attack. I say, is it something that they're trying to kill me in the airport? I was just looking for what is this? And so I get to my plane, I get the designation. And I said, I got to clean that up. I have no idea. I said, so I asked myself, okay, what bad things happened in the airport? I couldn't
Hmm.
think of anything. I mean, I came up with a few thoughts, like I was flying in the air when 9/11 happened, and I walked out, but I don't feel any trauma with that. And I was trying to find things, but I remember being dropped off at one gate, and the other gate was a long ways off, and I had like 1 minute to get there. So this fat man dragging luggage, and when I get to the other one, I feel like I'm going to die. I mean, seriously. It's almost like I was triathlon and it was my first day, and you're doing the whole thing.
Yeah,
It was horrible. And I didn't tap on that because I made a
yeah,
decision. It was a conscious
yeah,
decision. But my brain wired those together.
yeah.
Airport means you're going to die.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I cleaned it up. And when I went back, there was nothing there.
Yeah,
So that was a big one, really. And I don't
yeah,
usually get very big ones like that.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's sometimes how we outsmart ourselves is that when we come from this model, we kind of feel like I feel like we got all that, but and you're not always keenly aware at the time that something's going on. But I think, and
Hmm.
it's true too when when you're in a marriage, when you're in a household, that it's good to go
Mhm.
back and revisit things
Mhm.
that you know that you're thinking about afterwards. You go,
Yeah.
wow, there's really something going on there. You
Right.
know,
Yeah. Well, the thing that this does is gives, and because what I teach is not a technique, it's a way of
yeah,
life.
yeah. Oh, it
It's
definitely is for me.
it's a way of life. If
Yeah,
you live this way, you have control. You have the ability to change how you feel. You have the ability to conquer things you never thought possible. You have the ability to create peace within yourself at any moment, any time. And it also creates a good world for you, and it can impact others and encourage them to maybe join a better way of thinking and seeing yourself in the world. I
yeah,
mean, it's not everybody takes it. It's not like some people, I mean, they just don't want to deal with themselves. They'd rather just, they may think you're weird because you do it, but at least you're not miserable. Well, they are miserable.
yeah,
I have options. They don't have options. They have one, and
yeah,
that's to do the same thing they've always done. It's not a good life, but it is a life. And Jesus said, "Let the dead bury their dead," because they don't know what they're doing. They just keep repeating the same old cycle, acting just like their dad, their granddad, their great granddad, and the tradition continues.
yeah,
And I don't want to follow them. I don't want to fall in a ditch with everybody else. I want to do something different, and I want to be happier. I want to live a life that impacts people in a positive way.
yeah,
I was hurt. I shared my hurt, not intentionally, but that was what I knew. That's how you're supposed to be. And I know if you're listening, you know what I'm talking about. You can see your family. You can see the things going on. You got to be a rebel. You got to break the rules. You break the traditions of the family, the religions, and do something that actually works. And that is learn to know what you do inside yourself and make adjustments inside. And your life can get better only at the rate and speed you invest in you, your inner world. So those of you who want something better, come join me. Come learn how to be the master of your own mind in your own life. Your kids are watching you. Be a good example, you know?
yeah. And if I can just add to that, I grew up, I say I grew up. It was very normal to be tapping while you're driving, while you're in the
Oh,
shower,
yeah.
doing it. If you are the kind of person who's setting that example, then it doesn't feel weird for your kids to do. This is just like
Mm-mm.
something I grew up with. And to me, I don't even think twice about it. It's just like probably looks weird if you don't know what it is, but that's just been my reality for decades now. Just tap in
Amazing.
between. And then the other thing I would say too is there's that 5 day free course. I took that and it was really, really good. It actually kind of surprised me how much you share in that. And I'd point anybody to go check that out. It's really cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. My system's improved a lot since we started, hadn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, and I think it's something anybody can relate to. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your religious views are. It works with everything. It's like you're not. It just works with everything because it just makes sense. It just makes
Hmm.
sense. And if I mean, and the biggest testament is your own shifts. Honestly,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're enjoying this conversation, feel free to do that right now. Subscribe, hit the bell today because these insights will absolutely change your life. You will heal, grow, and transform your emotional world.
Hmm. And one more thing too, guys. If you have scary stuff inside, I had a lot of scary stuff. Adam had too, but it can fade. It can disappear. If you want somebody to help you, I can do it. Book a session. If you want to learn to do it yourself, you can change your self master training. It will teach you. It'll show you. The most important thing for you is never stop. Always persist and move forward. My number one tool is persistence. And Adam will tell you, I'm persistently after it. I'm still working it because I want to be the greatest part of my life. And I want to share that with everyone I meet. If you learn to love yourself and like yourself from within yourself, your life gets better. And haven't you ever noticed everywhere you go, your misery is there with you? Because it's you. Everywhere you go, your joy is right there with you because it's in you. Make one bigger than the other. Let go of one and embrace the other. The red pill or the blue pill? Which one do you want?
Yes. Can you imagine everybody knew this stuff? I think the two of you need to have like some sort of invitation to corporations, these big corporations that, can you
Yeah.
imagine these businesses knowing what to do and then taking that home to their families?
Hmm.
Do you still do
Yeah.
that, Robert?
What's that?
Do you like, are you invited into corporations? Do you have any of that?
I've never been really invited to corporations. I've always done my own self seminars, trainings.
Mhm.
I do seminars around the world. I get to pick where I want to go, find someone who lives there and say, hey, let's put one on, and we go there.
Mhm.
So that's how I've always done it. Sleep on somebody's couch. And that's what Adam and I we done. We went to where we go? We go to
Ireland.
Ireland, Scotland, and England.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this too. I recently had some friends who had gone to Ireland, and they told me about their stuff there. And one thing I didn't really appreciate at the time, I mean, I did, but I really appreciate it looking back, is that when you go, when we went to England and Scotland, we stayed in places. But when you stay with people, you really get a sense of like living there, like being in that culture, drinking tea when they drink tea or whatever, that's a little different than staying in a hotel and kind of doing your own thing. It gives you kind of a different experience. And not only that, they really know the place. Ah, you don't want to go there.
They're built-in tour guides.
Yeah, they really are. And not only that, you really get to form really good bonds with these people too. I really enjoyed my
Yeah,
time
yeah.
in Ireland.
So to say all that, guys, if you have a group of people and you can put on a seminar, contact me. I'll come. Build the stadium and I will be there. I love to travel. I love to share my knowledge. I love to see people change. And another thing too, guys, I do weekly sessions on Tuesdays. Tuesdays at 12 Oklahoma time and 6 o'clock. We see amazing people life changes with really big problems. They really do change in front of you. Change can happen. Come join us. Learn how to take control of your life.
Yes, or work directly with Robert to transform those patterns that you're holding on to. You don't have to hold on to them. You can let it go.
All right.
We'll have all the links in the show notes below. And so, Robert, any closing thoughts? Or Adam, any closing thoughts?
I would say this: learn how to forgive, learn how to go back, change your memories. We talk about ultimate forgiveness in this process, and it's like at the heart of all of it. I know it could feel like forgiving somebody is giving them something they don't deserve. It's not true. It's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. You have to go in and do the work on yourself. And ultimately, the person that, especially in my case, the person who existed in the past really isn't who's in front of me anymore. It's not the same person, because thankfully he knew how to work on himself, but that also taught me how to work on myself. And I try to pass it along to anybody who'll listen. So, my experience: go back, heal yourself, and ultimately forgive those that you feel like hurt you, because in the end, it's just you playing the story. It's just you narrating your life with that as your perspective. And once you get rid of that, who are you free to be at that? Once you get rid of that, what options do you have? You feel like a different person, and you're more keen to the kind of things that come up in your life now. You can just keep on changing, keep on tapping, because things come up. You can't control everything. But learning how to forgive those that have hurt you in your past is really the biggest key. And you hold all of it.
Yeah. All right. Good job. Thank you, Matt. Adam.
Yes. Yes.
I almost called him Matt. I got Matt and Adam. I call them both. Sometimes I say Madam. Matt and Adam mixed together. I call them one or the other.
And that's not new.
It's not new.
That's not new. That goes all the way back.
Ever since.
I think all parents do it. You
Yeah.
probably do it with your kids once in a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you for joining us on
Right.
another episode of the Robert Jean Experience. Subscribe to the podcast. Join our community of students who are mastering their minds and transforming their lives. Click on the link below to take your next steps.
All right. Thank you, guys. Ciao.
Ciao. Great
That was,
meeting you, Adam.
that was good,
Yes.
wasn't it? That was
Thanks
really
for
good.
inviting me. Yeah, it was great.
No, I think
Yeah.
it's great. We did great.
Yes,
Well,
it
hopefully there's
was.
something in there you can use because
Well, I'm going to use most of it. I'll just cut out
that's
some of
good.
the fluff in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
middle.
Yeah, because I almost feel like we should have had like maybe 3 or 4 practice runs or something because I'm just not used to being on camera and doing anything for a
It
podcast.
really just the thing is, you make it about the camera. It's not just about us.
Yeah.
I had a horrible fear of public speaking,
Yep.
but now
Adam, you,
I don't even think about it. I just think I'm talking to you, so I don't
Yeah.
even think about anybody else is watching. And when I do
Hmm.
seminars, I'm just having a conversation with someone I like or my
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah. I
So
can do that. I think the in my head I'm like, well, but this has an intention. It's for viewers or listeners, and I also know that you have something that you're trying to get across, and so I'm doing my best to think what's going to be useful for this?
yeah.
What are you looking for? What would you
I
like
just want
people to
raw.
know or
I
not
just
know?
want raw and real.
Yeah.
Raw and real.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what
Yeah.
I am. Raw and real.
I mean, there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of things I could have went into, but I just didn't really know what we were looking for. But
Well, listen,
um,
any story you tell, we can either cut it out or leave it in. I
yeah,
was actually wanting stories.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up the Scotland thing because I don't remember telling you that in Scotland, but
I do. Right there
I
at the
definitely
table.
remember the story. I definitely remember. So when I think of that story, I think of further back when you actually were working on me with that story.
But the weird thing is the story you gave me is the one I created in my head because I have no memory of the story.
Yeah,
And
right.
then now you're just telling a different story. So that's not the same one you told me. So it's like it's weird how I have a different story than what you
Yeah,
got.
yeah, yeah, and it's weird that some of it too kind of falls off or fades away where you only kind of have like a vague imprint of what it was. It's like you know what happened, but you just don't feel like you're in it anymore.
Yeah, because it shifted.
It's shifted, yeah, and I've worked a lot with that one, and we weren't really out of the weeds with the once you get out of the childhood because you still even in your early 20s, um, you know, there's a lot going on then too. So there was a lot going on in my life. It was sort of a transitional period of going into parenthood as a young parent, and I moved back in with you. That was almost like admitting defeat of me
Mm-hmm.
trying to put my foot out the door and become my own person. But I tried to embrace that and use it as an opportunity to bond as an adult with you because that's something that I always really wanted. I grow up, I'm an adult, and now we're friends. And that's something that I wanted, and I felt like we did do a lot of stuff together. We went
Oh
out to
yeah,
clubs, we went dancing, we went traveling, we ate
travel.
good
Yeah.
food together. I gained new friends through you, you gained new friends through me, and I just felt like that was a period of time where it was transitional. But there's a lot that I look back on and I'm thankful for. I'm happy that we did some of the stuff we did because right after I was single again, we the first thing we decided was like let's go see Puerto Rico. That was so fun. And I wanted that to kind of be the start or the marking of a different chapter in my life. But I was ignoring some big problems, I think, still you
Yeah.
know. And so, and we probably both were to some degree, and we both still had to learn how
Yeah.
to be adults together too, and kind of accept each other.
Hmm.
So, but I don't really have stories. I just knew that was both a really good time and a really big period of growth for me, for sure,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Very good. So, what stories did you not want to tell, or you should have told but you didn't tell?
Hmm. Well, I don't really know. Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't. It's not really a story, but I think it left an impression on. I know it left some kind of an impression on me, but when I was moving into, um, when I started going to college, really, um, I was really into acting. I wanted to be an actor, and that was something that I convinced myself was what I really wanted to do. But then there was another side that was like, well, you want to secure a good career for yourself, so go to college and maybe lean into something that you're already kind of good at, computers. And so, uh, third semester, I think, I was like, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to take this semester off. I'd like to get me some headshots, take some acting classes, and then I'll go back to college. But since I was saving for my college, I wanted to take the semester off and use that money to get myself kind of established as an actor and then go back to college. And the rule at the time was you're either in school or you pay rent. And I thought, I'm not paying rent. So, I thought if I'm going to pay rent, I'm going to pay rent somewhere else. And so my grandmother had this trailer. It definitely needed a lot of work. And she allowed me to pay rent there pretty low, something I could afford. But, I also had bills and all that stuff. So I moved out. And I think some of that I was bitter about for a long time that I wasn't trusted to make a decision for myself. And then part of it was dealing with my own sense of feeling like I let dad down on what he wanted me to do with my life. And some of it was, my own recklessness with what I prioritized in my life at that time. And like I said, it kind of felt like a bit of a rebellion, like, oh, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to go live on my own and I'm going to choose what I want to do. Now, once I started paying rent, paying bills, I couldn't afford college anymore, so I didn't finish it. And I had regrets for a really long time about that. And because I was paying rent, paying bills, I didn't have money for acting stuff either. I didn't get anything I wanted, except I did get a real big awakening about what it's like to be a grown up. And I was still not even paying like rent, full rent, like I could be somewhere else. Of course, that came along with, having this deal with my grandma, helping her fix up the house and stuff like that. But I just wasn't totally appreciative of the fact that, it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And it wasn't too long after that I had a baby, and it kind of dictated how my life went after that. And all of it was trying to outrun stuff I could have been working on with dad, with my dad, and sort of that dynamic. Now I have gone back and I have worked through a lot of that stuff because it really was in the background of a lot of decisions I made. It's
Right.
really crazy.
When did you face it? When you
Couldn't
started?
tell you.
Yeah, okay. So
Couldn't tell you.
not a pivotal moment where I'm like, okay, I got to clean up my stuff.
Hmm. No, because to me, those little epiphanies happen all the time on the daily. It's like, oh, I see what I'm doing. And I don't know when that was, and it could be that I worked on
Right.
parts of it and pieces of it until it was like
Totally.
nothing.
Mhm.
Because there has to be a moment where you transcend your own pride and you have to say, well, I had a role in that. Yeah, you know what I mean? And really,
Oh,
it's all me now because I don't know if dad
yes.
really thinks anything about it anymore,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? Or if he even remembers that I wanted to be an actor or anything like that. And I
Yes.
have been in little things here and there, but I've
Okay.
never really like I never really went the full way on anything. And so part of that too, transitioning to college, I was in martial arts and I didn't get my black belt, and that was a big thing I wanted to do. So I had this narrative about myself of not completing things. Well, you know who else I felt like didn't complete things?
Yeah.
My dad. And so
Tell
I
us
just
more.
this is my stuff. I'm not saying absolute truths here, but those were things that I felt like had a narrative, had a theme, and I think it goes back to some of that stuff. And so I really just had to work on that so it's not showing up in some way in my life now. At least I hope not, you know.
So what is the pattern there, Robert or Adam?
I don't know. Who knows exactly? I know he said dad
Rejections in
complete.
there.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so
I don't
to
know.
me, coming from my perspective, it felt like there was a non-acceptance of who I was. To me, at least at that time.
Yeah,
He didn't
you
accept
know,
me for who I am.
yeah. I think too. Because there's emotional illogic and there's logic. And I asked myself, like, what's the deal with me with Adam? What's the deal with each of the children?
Hmm.
Of course, I wasn't married. We were dating. We were engaged to get married. We got pregnant, and I was still in Bible college. And so then we got married, and then we had Adam. And of course, my wife, she was 21, I was 22. We had emotional issues. And I don't know if I actually blamed Adam that brought us together. I could have. I don't logic. If I did, I tapped on it, but I could have. And then again, I see him as me and how my dad treated me because, I was a bastard child. I wasn't my stepdad's son. So I don't know. I mean, I question what was it? What as it's just probably my attitude I had about me, and I just trained him and acted with him. And my daughter has the same emotional programming, and Matthew has the same emotional programming, the youngest
Hmm.
one. So I just think we trained based on how we felt about ourselves.
Hmm. That makes sense.
And I think that's just what it is. We
Yeah.
could try to, like a lot of people will say, well, the reason why no one I feel alone is because um, uh, I was premature. I was left alone in the incubator.
Hmm.
Or they
Hmm.
say, I feel alone because um, mom and dad were fighting and in the womb I could hear it. That's
Yeah.
horseshit, but they
Yeah.
believe
Right.
that.
Right.
So that they're looking for an excuse to name their aloneness on.
Hmm.
And it's just not because of any of that stuff. It's just that the emotional dynamics we learn by experiences and witnessing and how they interact with us. When if Adam or if Adam, I remember some things that I would say. They say, "Hey, let's go buy McDonald's." I said, "Okay, we'll go buy McDonald's." We went by it. We never stopped, but we drove by, wave.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We didn't have any
Uh-huh.
money to go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And remember, you were like the no man. You didn't think twice. No, we're not doing that. Nope. No.
nope,
And I think it's
nope.
because, I think it's because you were probably denied a lot as a kid, but also you develop a mentality when you don't have very much money that, oh, that's just the way it is.
It is.
You just got to deal
Yeah.
with it. That's just the way it is. Dad said no. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just the way it is.
And I remember Matthew, the youngest one, was so ashamed of me to pick him up or take him to school
Yeah,
because of,
I experienced some of that too. Yeah.
because of my multicolored ugly trucks.
Yeah. Yeah, because it kind of signals like a class issue, let's say. We
Yeah,
always, I mean, in the school district we were in, we were really lucky because they were new additions to the school district, and we were around a lot of newer neighborhoods, but we happened to be
nicer.
in, there's no tracks, but it's like the other side of the tracks, and we
Right.
were almost trying to be incognito with these other kids, and we were all too
Yeah.
aware that we weren't as
We,
well endowed
we were the poor
financially.
people
That's
in the
right.
trailer park.
Yeah, and the last thing we wanted to
Yeah.
do was signal our unintelligence or so to me that was one of the things, you'll notice I don't have, at least I think I don't have much of an accent because um I felt like that was signaling
Yeah.
an ignorance or an unintelligence.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, mistakenly, it's taken that way. But for me, I didn't want to signal that I didn't come from money or that I wasn't wearing clothes that were bought from a store like everyone else, even though mine may have been thrifted or from a garage sale.
It's all garage sale and thrift store
That's
shopping.
right. But the last thing I wanted to do was and I used to have nightmares about showing up to somebody's house and buying clothes and they come out the door and I'm buying their stuff. Or I come to school and they're like, that looks like
And
my
that's my
shirt.
shirt.
I would have died. I would have died.
Yeah.
I would have died. So there's a bit of what is in
Yeah.
the culture as imposter syndrome. I had a bit
Yeah.
of that just being in school, like I didn't really
Yeah.
belong. But
Yeah.
I ended up being a pretty, in third grade, I got held back, and I would say that was kind of a trauma too. I got held back, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because I met new friends and I was excelling at being myself all of a sudden. In my second go, I was acing everything. I was put in, my artistic skills started coming out. I was kind of a class clown. It's like my personality started coming out. My stuff started getting, I drew the cover of the yearbook one year. My stuff got put in the state fair. It was like I was finding myself once I got held back. So in retrospect, I saw it, but at the time it was like a big
Right.
thing. I remember my birthday, you took me to Walmart, you bought me a water gun. And I felt like when I got it, because you didn't, that was so abnormal. Sounds regular, but it's abnormal. That's not how we did things, and I didn't really get new stuff like that. Um, but I remember you took me to Walmart. I picked it out, and we bought it, and it was I felt at the time that it was like it's your birthday. I need to pick you up because I know you're really sad about being held back. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah, I remember that water gun being associated with almost like you felt bad that I had friends before I got held back and stuff, and so it was like it's kind of a big deal to me at the time, and I was a little ashamed of it too.
I don't know.
Not now, but I
No,
was
I got
then.
held back in second grade.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal now, especially as a parent. I understand it, but at the
Well,
time,
it made you, instead of one of the youngest kids in the class, you were one of the oldest kids.
that's the thing. Yeah, I was like, I'm
And you were
already
the
kind of
littlest.
short, and so I was kind of a runt, before.
Yeah.
So
Well, so it really, like you said, it was a good thing, but
it
you
was.
didn't feel like it at the time.
No, but I think how I see myself could be totally different if I were at this point in my life without that happening. I feel like
Right.
being a
Well, well, yeah,
like
but you
working
would have been
harder for
different, but life would
material.
have been harder for you because
It
you'd pick
would
up the
have.
belief life is hard and
Yeah,
you never
or I'm
catch
not
up.
very good at school or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it may have been.
Yeah.
I felt like I was doing okay. I was making A's and B's when I got held back, but it still was probably a lot harder to do um, things that were
But I
above
remember
me.
the teacher talking about you, and I think that it was not that you couldn't win on, but it was best to keep you
Yeah,
back
yeah,
because of
yeah,
your age.
yeah. And I probably had little tells that I was a little less mature or something. Part of it was I was socialized a little bit different than everybody else too.
Yeah,
I didn't
homeschool.
go to preschool or nothing.
Right, that's right.
So going into
Well,
kindergarten, it was like a new thing for me. It was like a whole new world because we didn't really socialize much. It was me and my sister. That was my
and the kids in the neighborhood.
yeah, and the kids in the neighborhood. But by when I was in kindergarten, I don't know if I had any friends in the neighborhood yet either.
Yeah.
So it was a
Well,
different world.
so do we go? We did well there, Crystal.
Very good.
All right.